Does anyone remember the pager? Raise your hand if you remember the pager. Anybody? Did you have a pager? So I had a pager in 1997, and I remember it was the coolest technology ever invented. One of the first pages I got was from one of my best friends, and it said 07734. And if you turned over the pager, that read hello. It was really phenomenal. Well, about 2 years later, the pager went from about 70 million pagers in the world to about 2 million pagers in the world. And it was replaced by the mobile phone. Since then, the mobile phone is now the smartphone. We have about 7 billion smartphones in the world. The reason I tell this story is I want to talk about the exponential speed of AI that we're seeing. Your smartphone, you may not realize this, but the Apollo spacecraft that landed on the moon in 1969, your smartphone is about 120 million times more powerful, more processing power than the Apollo spacecraft supercomputer. So if you say that another way, we're using it for our Maps application to get here to the event today. We're using it to message our friends, maybe a TikTok video, right? But you could actually use today's smartphone, one smartphone, to send 120 million Apollo spacecrafts to the moon. That's the power of data and AI. The speed of the evolution is something no generation has ever seen before. But with great speed comes great responsibility, and that's why we're here today. The question I want to ask this audience is, what will be our legacy? We're living in one of the most phenomenal times from a technology perspective ever in the history of the world. We can use it for good, or we can look the other way. If each of us go 20 to 30 years from now and look at this moment in time, what will we say? Did we make a difference? Did we help make the world a better place? Or do we miss our opportunity to shine? That's what I want you to look deep inside your heart for the next 20 minutes as we answer those questions. There was an interesting quote from a Georgia Tech professor, Melvin Kronsberg. He said, "Technology is neither good nor bad, nor is it neutral." Nor is it neutral. When I heard this, it took me a second, and I realized what he was saying. Just like the mobile phone, it's changed society. Technology is going to impact us. It can impact us positively, it can impact us negatively, but it will impact us. The key that I wanted to talk about today is not about back office transformations or AI-enabled procurement or using your digital media to make it more effective, right, so we can drive revenue. I could spend time on that, but what I wanted to share more about today was the good that AI can do in the world, and then we'll come back to what our legacy is going to be. So a few positive changes that we're seeing in the world. I'm going to share 5 cases. The first one is actually helping to feed populations in India that otherwise, students that otherwise wouldn't have food. There's a nonprofit called Aksha Patra. Aksha Patra has a project called Million Meals Project, where they ship food to each of the schools where a child may otherwise not get fed. Now, what you may not know is in India, about 3,000 students die every day from starvation or malnutrition. 3,000 children die every day from malnutrition or starvation. It's such a sad number. So this great organization has tremendous logistical challenges trying to get this food into the population of students. They've got to get it to the right school, to the right student, at the right temperature. You can imagine the logistical challenge, particularly for a non-government organization, nonprofit organization. So we helped this organization use blockchain and AI and IoT technology to improve their throughput of number of meals served by about 1 million meals. 1 million more meals are getting served to these students. That's the power of data and AI. Or if we take the coral reef, many of us have done scuba diving and snorkeling, and we know about the coral reef. But one of the things that you may not realize is about 500 million people rely on the coral reef for food, for protection, or for income. Also, the coral reef has declined about 50% in the last 60 years. 50% decline. So we partnered on a project called Project Coral with several nonprofits, several government organizations. We used image classification technology to map where the greatest coral reef decline was, so we could then take the steps to prevent that. So far, this organization has done about 25% of the world's coral reef ecosystem and put in place to help that decline. If we think about climate change, it's arguably one of the most critical crises of our generation or of the world. Climate change is going to impact everything we do. Data and AI could serve as a foundational tool to help fight climate change. One of the things that we've done is worked with cities. Infrastructure, building infrastructure, is about 40% of the carbon emissions today. 40%. And if you take an old city with a lot of old buildings that are super beautiful, that have been around 1,000 years, those buildings are actually even more inefficient. So we work with the city of Vienna. The city of Vienna, beautiful city, a lot of old architecture if you've ever been there, but a lot of that's not very efficient. So you can see what we did is we did a digital twin, and we helped simulate where the most heat loss was occurring from those buildings so that we could retrofit them with efficient energy usage. The nice thing about this is most of our cities don't have unlimited resources, right? So for the city of Vienna, they got to see where they can make the biggest impact. So far, we believe it's about an 80% reduction by 2025 in building infrastructure for the city of Vienna. And this is just one use case of many in the world of carbon emissions and sustainability. Responsible AI. 7 out of 10 people live in a society with growing inequality. 7 out of 10 people live in a society with growing inequality. One of the main tools that we've studied is financial assets, financial lending products. Those actually can contribute to inequality. So responsible AI is all about, we've worked with the Alan Turing Institute to eliminate bias in any sort of financial transaction that you see. The key is ensuring there's no discrimination by race, by ethnicities, in every single financial transaction. What I want to say about responsible AI is it's not just a tool. We've developed the tools that eliminate the bias. I think we all have seen those. This is about a mindset shift that every single person in this room understands, but we have to make sure the rest of the people not listening to today's conversation understand. The last case I'm going to share is health. Health is one that I'm super passionate about personally, just because I believe there's tremendous opportunity in the health space. The case that I'm going to share is about Alzheimer's. About 1 out of 9 people at the age of 65 and older get diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And if you've ever had a friend or a family member go through that experience, it's devastating. Absolutely devastating disease. But we know that diagnosing Alzheimer's is critical early, but it's been hard. It's been a bunch of pen and paper tests that you had to do with individuals that weren't super accurate. So Emory University, led by a doctor named Dr. Alan Levy, came up with a retina scanning device that tracks the eye movement in a series of questions. This retina scanning device can actually predict early onset Alzheimer's with about 70+% accuracy. This allows the Alzheimer's to be treated. It also allows the families to prepare for what's about to happen. So these are 5 examples. And what I wanted to tell you is that these 5 examples have 5 things that are critical. And this goes for any organization or any nonprofit. This is the framework for change. The first is they had a bold idea. I'm a big fan of incremental progress. It's important that you continue to do the small incremental work to keep the momentum going, no matter what you're working on. But I also believe that you have to have a bold vision to inspire, to keep people motivated. That's the first step. Second, outcome focused. We're all data, we're all AI, we're all technology, right? So sometimes we want to focus in on the models, we want to focus in on the underlying data, we need to make sure that's accurate. But the key is, what are the outcomes you're trying to drive? The third is collaboration. This audience and those listening, we've got nonprofits, we have government, we have corporations, we have technology providers. I just met with a student. I love to see the students here, our next generation of leaders. Collaboration across the ecosystem is more critical now than ever before. I often joke with my team, no one's an expert anymore. I'm not an expert, because the world is moving way too fast for any one of us to have all the answers. We have to collaborate across the ecosystem in order to get the results we need. Responsible AI in everything we do. Sustainability, responsibility, accountability. This is foundational to anything that we do within AI. Last but not least, courageous leaders. Courageous leaders. Who are those leaders? That's each of you. It's each of you here listening to this presentation today. We need you. I can tell you that the world is in very uncertain times. You all see the news. We need leaders like yourself. The fact that you're here today or you're listening tells me you understand where we are in society. So the question is, in your heart, what are you passionate about? Maybe it's something that impacted a family member or a friend. Maybe it's an area that you just know we can do better together. I'm going to share a personal example of something that's impacted me personally. This is my daughter, Melissa. So Melissa was a beautiful 3-year-old. She loved to sing and dance, and she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. We never saw it coming. We went to some of the best children's hospitals in the world to get her treated, but unfortunately, Melissa passed away in 2015. I made a promise to my daughter that I would never stop fighting for her and all the other children that would be diagnosed with childhood cancer. In fact, childhood cancer is the #1 death by disease in children. And if the children survive the treatment, about 2/3 of them have life-altering, severe side effects from the intense treatment that they receive. So I made this promise to my daughter, and what I wanted to find out was, why was Melissa's type of AML, acute myeloid leukemia cancer, treated the same way as other acute myeloid leukemia cancers? Shouldn't we do something based on the genetic profiles, something more precise, something more effective? So we set out on a mission with Fred Hutch Children's Hospital and nonprofits including Cure Childhood Cancer, TPAML, and Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Again, it took an entire ecosystem of people. And what we wanted to understand is, first, the data underlying each of these children that had acute myeloid leukemia. We mapped about 2,000 children, which is something called genomic sequencing, which looks at all of our underlying DNA. And we can actually understand what kind of mutation is causing what kind of cancer. We could also look at what kind of treatment is responding to each genetic mutation. We developed data ingestion pipelines. We developed visualization techniques. Our goal was that the researchers who have been doing this a long time should spend less time worrying about the data and the visualization and more time applying what they know best, which is how to treat the patients. So I can tell you, we have not found a cure. We have not found a cure for childhood cancer. But I was super proud of some of the work that's done recently. I was talking to the lead doctor on this from Fred Hutch, Dr. Sohail Mashinsky, he goes by Sohail, just the other day. And one of the things that he shared with me was that there was a patient that came to him with something called, it's a mutation with a 100% fatality rate, young female patient, 100% fatality rate. The parents were about to go and put the child on hospice care. I know this feeling all too well. Sohail, courageous leader, he looked at the data and he started to notice that there was a genetic mutation similar in acute myeloid leukemia and ovarian cancer. So he asked the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration, for approval to treat this patient with an ovarian cancer drug. He asked the pharmaceutical company for approval, but they said yes. I was so happy to learn that this child, who had failed all the traditional chemotherapy treatments, she responded, 100% remission to this treatment, 100% remission. That's the power of data and AI. So when I look at that story, if we can impact just one life positively, it makes all the difference in the world. So as you carry about the day, what I wanted to make sure that you thought about is, as courageous leaders, what makes you passionate? What makes you excited for the future? If we look 20, 30 years from now, if we look at this moment today, would we say we did all we could? Would we say that we contributed positively to society? I do believe that if we're bold, if we're outcome focused, if we're focused on the responsible AI, and we collaborate, and most importantly, if we're courageous, I do believe that we can absolutely have a positive legacy on society. Thank you very much.